Welcome, everyone, to Opportunities to Connect Eligible Immigrant Families to SNAP, Reflections from USDA and Community Partners. Bienvenidos a Oportunidades para conectar a familias inmigrantes elegibles con el programa SNAP, Reflexiones de USDA y socios comunitarios. Before we get going, I want to introduce you to Olga Sosa, who will share information on how to join this webinar in Spanish or in English. Olga, please take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Olga Sosa, and I am here with the Community Language Cooperative. And first of all, I want to thank the organizers for creating a space for language justice. What this means is that we want to create a space where everyone can participate and engage in the language of their heart, or the language that they feel most comfortable in. We will use simultaneous interpretation to create this space. When I finish saying this in Spanish, we will turn on interpretation, and you will see a global icon that says interpretation. If you're not fully bilingual, we ask that you select your preferred language. If you are bilingual, feel free to listen to everyone in their own language. When you select your language, you can check mute original audio so you don't have to hear both languages at the same time. Hola, buenas tardes a todas las personas. Mi nombre es Olga Sosa y estoy aquí con la comunidad de lenguaje cooperativa. Y antes que nada, quiero darle las gracias a los organizadores de este evento por crear un espacio para practicar la justicia del lenguaje. Lo que eso significa es que queremos crear un espacio donde todos puedan participar e involucrarse en el idioma de su corazón o en el idioma en el que se sientan más cómodos. Usaremos la interpretación simultánea para crear este espacio. Cuando termine de decir esto, activaremos la interpretación y verá un icono de globo que dice interpretación. También, si está en una tablet o en un teléfono, puede ver los puntitos y ahí puede agregar interpretación. Si es completamente bilingüe, le pedimos que seleccione su idioma preferido. Si es bilingüe, puede escuchar a todos en su idioma. Entonces, todos, por favor, si necesitan la interpretación en español, seleccionen el idioma. Thank you very much, and we're ready for interpretation.
Welcome, everyone, to Opportunities to Connect Eligible Immigrant Families to SNAP, Reflections from USDA and Community Partners. This webinar is hosted by the Food Research and Action Center, aka FRAC, and I'm Alex Ashbrook, FRAC's Director of Root Causes and Specific Populations, and I'll be facilitating this webinar. We are thrilled to have so many of you here. A true showing of solidarity and enthusiasm for vital work to connect eligible immigrant families to SNAP. This webinar will run about 60 minutes. The webinar is being recorded, so we'll be able to send the recording and slides in a follow-up email to everyone who has registered. Now, we have a lot of people on this webinar, but we want to hear from you about what you're doing and what assistance you need. We encourage you to post information, any information you want to share throughout the webinar in the chat box. So the chat box is at the bottom of your screen. So any information you have on how to connect eligible immigrant families to SNAP. There'll also be time at the end of the webinar for questions. And we encourage you to put questions throughout in the Q&A boxes to the right of the raise hand feature at the bottom of your webinar screen. We'll hear our presentations first, and then we'll have time for questions at the end of those presentations. Next slide. So a quick word on FRAC. FRAC works to improve the nutrition, health, and well-being of people struggling against poverty-related hunger in the United States. We do this through advocacy, partnerships, and by advancing bold and equitable policy solutions. I encourage you to learn more about FRAC and sign up for our newsletters. Visit www.frac.org if you haven't already joined us. Next slide. Now, I thought it was fitting to start with words of an immigrant parent from Colorado who participated in a focus group I facilitated back before COVID-19 and after the release of the terrible public charge rule that, among other horrible things, considered SNAP, Medicaid, and other public benefits in a public charge determination when someone was trying to get a green card. This is what this parent said. As you said about food stamps, I don't receive it. I don't take it because I'm afraid of my status. And just like me, there are people who don't because I'm scared. That's why I stopped taking it. Now, fast forward to 2022. My hope is that this parent's views would be very different today. That today he would say how he received accurate information about SNAP and learned that the public charge rule does not apply. And as a result, he was able to access SNAP to support the nutrition and health and well-being of his family. And there is indeed good news to celebrate, namely the Biden administration's release of the final public charge rule in early September 2022. The new rule does not include SNAP in a public charge determination. And that is an important victory made possible thanks to many, many of you on this call and others, and all the meetings and emails and comments. Remember, more than 200,000 and advocacy you did to get rid of this prior draconian public charge rule. We know this rule sowed fear and confusion and chilled participation in SNAP and other nutrition programs among immigrant families. So take a moment to celebrate. Give yourself a pat on the back. Stretch your hands. Clap your hands. Okay, but don't get too comfortable because now we know that there is lots more work to be done. Next slide. Today's webinar is not going to focus on the new public charge rule. Why? Because you really don't need to know it anymore now that it doesn't apply to SNAP if your role is to connect immigrants to SNAP. And if you do need to know about it, please take a look at the Protecting Immigrant Families website for lots of recorded trainings and information. Now, what are we going to do in today's webinar? Well, today's webinar is all about equipping you with accurate information about SNAP and strategies that can help eligible immigrant families access SNAP. Our agenda features 3 incredible speakers. First, we're going to hear from Jill Schaefer from USDA. Then we're going to hear from Alejandra Jimenez and Anya Rose from Hunger Free Colorado. You'll hear from them about national, state, and community-focused opportunities to connect immigrants to SNAP. And you'll get access to some incredible materials along the way. All right, well, let's get started. And don't forget to submit questions and comments in the features at the bottom of your screen. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you, Alex. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jill Schaefer. I'm a SNAP program analyst at the USDA's Food and Nutrition Service, or FNS. Thank you for attending, and thank you to FRAC for putting together this webinar. Next slide, please. Today, I'm going to share with you what the 2022 final public charge rule means for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, and some of FNS's recent efforts to increase program access to eligible non-citizen and immigrant communities. As Alex mentioned, please put your questions in the Q&A box, and I will do my best to address some of them at the end of the webinar. Next slide. Before we get into the efforts on public charge, I do want to set the stage and provide some context about non-citizen eligibility for SNAP. SNAP eligibility is limited to certain categories of lawfully present non-citizens who are subject to the same income and resource limits as regular participants. SNAP regulations use the term qualified alien to describe those lawfully present immigrants who could potentially be eligible for SNAP benefits. This term is defined in the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996, known as PRORA, and can apply to legal permanent residents, or LPRs, refugees, asylees, and other lawfully present immigrant categories. Unlawfully present non-citizens and non-citizen visitors, such as tourists, students, and those on temporary work visas, are not and have never been eligible for SNAP. Next slide, please. Some non-citizens need to meet an additional condition before they are eligible for SNAP. Most legal permanent residents, or LPRs or green card holders, have a 5-year waiting period before they can get SNAP. They could also have 40 qualifying quarters of work, be under the age of 18, blind or disabled, elderly, or have a military connection. There are categories of non-citizens who do not need to meet an additional condition and are eligible for benefits immediately. These include, but are not limited to, children under 18, refugees, asylees, and trafficking victims. Non-citizen policy is complex because there are multiple laws that govern eligibility for public benefits like SNAP. The United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS, which is housed under the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, oversees immigration service functions for the federal government. In 2011, FNS worked with the Department of Justice, DHS, and the Department of Health and Human Services to publish the SNAP guidance on non-citizen eligibility, which continues to be a key resource on this topic. We encourage you to reference this guidance pictured here for more details on non-citizen SNAP eligibility. Next slide. FNS acknowledges that SNAP participation has been historically low among non-citizen households, even though many are eligible. In 2019, the participation rate for eligible non-citizens was 55%, and the rate for eligible citizen children living with non-citizen adults was 64%, compared to the national participation rate of 82% among all eligible individuals and a national participation rate of 96% of all individuals living in households with children. Next slide. As you can see from the graph, and many have seen in the communities you work with, non-citizen participation in SNAP has decreased over the past several years. We know that concerns related to immigration status remain a notable barrier preventing eligible immigrants from accessing food assistance programs. FNS is committed to increasing program access so that all eligible individuals who want to participate in SNAP can do so. Next slide, please. FNS recognizes that non-citizens may face several barriers to program access, many of which deal with misinformation or lack of clarity for SNAP policies, and we are working towards resolving these issues. Click, please. One major barrier is public charge. In recent years, public charge policy has received significant attention. A public charge is a person who is likely to become primarily dependent on the government for subsistence. Individuals who are determined to be public charges may face immigration-related consequences. A rule published in 2019 would have made receipt of SNAP a consideration in public charge determinations. This rule was overturned in 2021. Despite the reversal of the 2019 rule, some eligible non-citizens continue to fear that applying for or receiving SNAP benefits will make them a public charge and negatively impact their immigration status. FNS understands the importance of communicating existing public charge policy and building trust so that eligible immigrant families can better access critical nutritional support. I'll say more about what FNS is doing in this space shortly. Click, please. There may also be language or literacy barriers. Individuals also may not apply for SNAP if they are unable to read or write in their native language or have a limited English proficiency. States have a responsibility to provide applicants and participants with language resources, which I will talk about later. And click, please. A third barrier is program knowledge. Overall lack of information or misinformation about SNAP availability or rules, such as providing immigration documents for verification, may keep some individuals from applying. In the next few slides, I'm going to talk about ways FNS is working to reduce barriers in program access. Next slide. The Department of Homeland Security published a 2022 final rule that clarifies and puts into regulation longstanding policy that eligible immigrants and their family or household members can apply and participate in FNS programs without fear that it will negatively impact their immigration status. This means that participation in SNAP will not be used in a public charge determination. A person applying for a green card, for example, to the United States can apply for and receive FNS nutrition assistance without being deemed a public charge. A non-citizen will not be deported, denied entry to the country, or denied permanent status because they receive SNAP benefits. Applying for SNAP on behalf of a family member does not make a non-citizen a public charge. This rule was published on September 9th and is effective December 23rd of this year. So again, this rule clarifies and puts into regulation longstanding policy. So even right now, before the rule goes into effect, SNAP is not considered in a public charge determination. Next slide. FNS understands the importance of communicating current public charge policies accurately and is committed to reducing fear and misinformation. To help states share the message that participating in SNAP does not make someone a public charge and will not be considered in a public charge determination, FNS and USCIS developed language states and community partners can use when working with SNAP eligible immigrants and mixed status household clients. The language you see on the screen and that I just mentioned was part of a joint letter published in January, which was modeled off a 2011 letter expressing support for the 1999 interim field guidance that excluded application for and receipt of SNAP benefits from a public charge determination. This messaging is also available in Spanish. Next slide, please. In addition to the joint letter, FNS also sent a letter to state commissioners stating the 2019 rule was vacated and the 1999 field guidance was in effect, encouraging states to make the policy well known. In September of this year, upon publication of the public charge rule, we sent letters to state agencies alerting them to the rule and encouraging them to make the public charge policy well known to their communities. USDA Secretary Vilsack also put out a statement of support. Additionally, we participated in an interagency stakeholder call with THS and other federal agencies to amplify this rule's messaging. Next slide, please. Non-citizens may not be able to read or write in their native language or have limited English proficiency. Even though anyone can apply for SNAP benefits and local offices have applications in many languages, some people believe they cannot apply for SNAP benefits without speaking English. Applicants do not need to speak or read English to be eligible for SNAP. SNAP regulations require that state agencies take reasonable steps to ensure that limited English proficiency persons have meaningful access to programs, services, and benefits. This includes the requirement to provide bilingual program information and certification materials and interpretation services to single language minorities in certain project areas, such as counties if the state operates SNAP by county. An applicant or participant can also have an authorized representative to act on behalf of the household in applying for or using SNAP benefits. One click. FNS is working toward translating additional client-facing materials at the national level into languages other than English, including certain web pages and news announcements. Here is our eligibility page that can be toggled from English to Spanish using the button in the top right-hand corner. A few other key web pages relating to eligibility and information on how to apply are currently available in Spanish. We also have plans to translate them into additional languages. Next slide. SNAP is a complex program with many rules and requirements that can get confusing, especially when factoring in non-citizen eligibility requirements. It is important that immigrant communities understand that individuals do not have to be a US citizen to be eligible for SNAP. And just because a parent is ineligible due to immigration status does not necessarily mean their child is ineligible. A non-citizen may choose to apply only for their US citizen children in the household. Additionally, SNAP offices are not allowed to ask for immigration documents for people who are not applying to receive benefits themselves. Our SNAP non-citizen guidance was developed with the goal to assist people in understanding current eligibility requirements in order to bridge the gap between eligible persons in need of food assistance and SNAP benefits. In addition to sending letters to states communicating public charge policy, we also communicate changes relating to non-citizen eligibility following new legislation. For example, last year, the continuing resolution had a provision impacting Afghan nationals. We issued a memo outlining its impact on SNAP so that state agencies could best serve these individuals. We also provide technical assistance to our states when they have questions about existing non-citizen policy. Next slide, please. Additionally, we have developed an FNS-wide webpage compiling non-citizen specific information for all FNS programs and are developing a SNAP-specific page to make it easier to find information on non-citizen eligibility. The FNS-wide page went live yesterday. We are also working on getting these pages translated, and they will have an English-Spanish toggle. Next slide. The page includes information on all FNS programs. So you can see here, you can navigate to SNAP and a WIC. Next slide. You can also navigate to school meals programs, summer meals programs. And next slide. As well as child and adult care food program and additional programs. We hope this webpage will be a helpful resource. Next slide, please. FNS is committed to increasing access to SNAP. One of the ways we encourage states to increase program access is through outreach. Program informational activities or SNAP outreach activities are a critical tool to ensure vulnerable populations are aware of the availability, eligibility requirements, application procedures, and benefits of the SNAP program. In line with administration priorities and to ensure that all eligible households have the opportunity to access SNAP benefits, FNS has developed outreach priority areas to encourage states to target certain underrepresented or particularly vulnerable populations. Immigrant communities and mixed status families were an outreach priority area in both our fiscal year 2022 and 2023 memos. FNS encouraged partnerships with trusted community partners serving immigrant populations to help states explain changes about the public charge rule and current policy for eligible immigrant households, in particular mixed status families. We have seen a good response from states as a result of these efforts. After the 2022 memo, 16 states implemented new SNAP outreach activities or further enhanced their efforts to reach immigrant communities in partnership with community organizations. We will be hearing from Hunger Free Colorado about the great work they are doing in this space in just a couple minutes. Next slide. Some of the outreach activities states engage in include pre-screening for benefits, application assistance, gathering verification, interview assistance, recertification assistance, community outreach, mobile offices, or social media. Next slide, please. Finally, we want to point you to some resources that we've referenced today. I can put some of these in the chat. For more information about the public charge rule and FNS programs, please follow our website for communications and guidance we've sent to our state agency and community partners on the public charge rule. If you, your partners, or clients have questions about SNAP or other programs, please contact your state SNAP agencies who can assist you with your questions. One more click. Oh, go ahead. Is there another? We'll go through this one. And one more. Okay, I just want to wrap up and say that we are interested in hearing from all of you what FNS can do to reduce fear around applying for SNAP and increase program access. We are also interested in hearing what you all are already doing so that others can see and share best practices in the chat. So thank you again for attending today. We look forward to working with all of you to spread the message that application for and receipt of SNAP does not make someone a public charge, and continue in our efforts to increase program access to immigrant communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill. A virtual round of applause. We're so delighted that USDA has joined us today. And please note, many of you are asking in the chat if you're going to get links to the USDA resources. That last slide had a lot of the links to the materials that Jill mentioned, and we will be sending out a slide deck to everyone who participated in the webinar or registered for the webinar. So stay tuned. And Jill, congratulations on launching the webpage yesterday. I know you've been working really hard on that. So so glad it happened the day before the webinar. We are thrilled. Well, next we're going to hear from our friends at Hunger Free Colorado. And by the end of their presentation, you will know what SNAP Peas is. All right, so take it away, Anya and Alejandra.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Anya Rose, and I'm on the policy team at Hunger Free Colorado. And we are a statewide nonprofit that works to connect people to food resources today to meet existing needs, and also to drive policy and systems and social change to end hunger. So I'm going to be focusing on what our SNAP outreach program looks like and how we use it to connect immigrant families to SNAP. And then I'll be passing off to my colleague Alejandra, who coordinates one of our outreach programs where we work directly with partners serving different communities around our state. Next slide. So even though the public charge rule never really applied to SNAP, we know that many immigrants still had and have serious fears about accessing the program. And we're really grateful that now the new rule enables much clearer and stronger and consistent messaging. So we have some great new tools in our toolkit, but we do need to use them. And it's still not a perfect solution to making this program feel safe and accessible and understandable. So while this is huge progress that we're really, really grateful for, it's not a silver bullet, and it still takes trusted relationships to communicate this good news. And, we'll be focusing on our outreach and public charge education efforts today, but I do want to mention that they don't exist as solitary strategies for our organization when it comes to addressing hunger in immigrant communities. And that's because when it comes to SNAP access, some of these challenges are rooted deeper than public charge. SNAP still has really complex counterproductive rules around eligibility for immigrants of many statuses. So people's experience applying for the program can still seem to perpetuate concern and fear and a sense of, is this really for me? So I think that's a big challenge that we're up against. And it means that for us, policy change is also a key part of the solution we envision when it comes to addressing hunger in immigrant communities. Not only do we need to message that SNAP is not part of public charge and that it does not come with immigration consequences, we also want to support reforms and actually make the program feel that way in all senses. And that means making it more accessible and simpler to access for immigrants. And it means seeking changes that actively welcome these communities who are currently excluded. So, we need Congress to do things like pass the Lift the Bar Act to remove additional barriers to access. So we also do community organizing and policy and advocacy work to drive that type of change. And we try to integrate it with our outreach work and have it be informed by our outreach work. But with that said, back to SNAP outreach. So next slide. So Jill touched on this a bit already, but SNAP outreach is essentially a component of SNAP that allows states to work with partners like us to help connect eligible households that are not currently participating in SNAP to the program. And there's a long list of allowable SNAP outreach activities, but in my mind, they all generally can kind of be categorized as either education that seeks to make the program more known and understandable. So that could be community trainings or workshops or material development and translation. And then there's application assistance. So outreach providers can actually help people to apply for and assist them through the application process, which is multi-step and can be challenging. And so this is also a great way to fund this important work that a lot of groups already do, because any state and local investments that go toward allowable outreach activities can be matched with federal dollars through reimbursement. And this often looks like states contracting with community groups or organizations to provide these services. In Colorado, we're one of the groups that the state contracts with. And the trick is working with your state to submit an annual SNAP outreach plan for approval to USDA. Next slide. So we do SNAP outreach, including with immigrant communities, in three main ways. One is through a statewide bilingual food resource hotline, where folks can reach us through the phone and we can submit SNAP applications over the phone, as well as navigate a range of other nutrition programs. Two is through bilingual mobile outreach at community sites in the Denver metro area. And that looks like a really similar service to the hotline, but in person at places like WIC clinics or health clinics or public libraries or food distribution sites. And then third is through our network of SNAPPs. And these are partners engaging in application services. So these are organizations around the state that serve different communities. And we provide them with SNAP outreach training and technical assistance, as well as pass-through SNAP outreach funds, so that they can work to connect folks to SNAP in their own communities. And Ale will dig into that piece more later. But it's been a main goal of our outreach program to better serve Colorado's immigrant community for several years now. So for all of these methods, we make sure that we train navigators and partners on eligibility for immigrants, on the common myths and pitfalls in the application process, especially those related to immigration, and on public charge. So that's part of our onboarding process. And then internally, our policy team tries to support outreach staff with tricky cases and also provide some ongoing opportunities to provide feedback so that our work is really, really integrated, and we're having regular conversations with our community facing staff. And then we're also having regular communications with state and county agencies so that we make sure we're on the same page and can be pushing consistent messaging. Next slide. So not too long after I started as a navigator on our hotline, almost 6 years ago, we got this really intense uptick in calls from families asking to disenroll out of fear of immigration-related consequences. And those, the calls weren't entirely new, but the uptick in them definitely was. And we quickly realized that the spike was tied to news that public charge could be changed. So from that point on, we tried to address public charge head on in our outreach efforts. So over the last several years, we've done lots of community and partner trainings on public charge and food resources. And we've had several versions in order to keep up with the latest rule changes of this document on this slide that summarizes relevant information on SNAP, other food programs, and public charge. And it's been a key strategy for us to develop these resources with community and navigator input. And we've been able to share them really widely, and they've been used by our partners and promotoras around the state, as well as state and county agencies. So this is the current version of that material. We're in the process of refreshing it. But it includes information on food programs accessible to all immigrants, regardless of status. And that's something that came from community feedback, that folks really wanted information beyond SNAP and to also know about programs that wouldn't ask at all about status. And then that green box at the bottom is a call out with more information on SNAP. And then the backside is information on public charge. And the public charge section emphasizes how no food and nutrition programs are part of the public charge test, but also provides some general background, since we know that questions do remain for a lot of folks. And often they're not just applying for SNAP, they might have questions about other programs. So there's also a tool for folks to determine if public charge applies to them at all. And while we've determined that it's still important for us to address public charge for now, because it's still in our common vocabulary and it's still a concern, despite the recent rule change, we hope that eventually that section will become less and less necessary. We just feel we're not quite there yet. Next slide. And then I do just want to zoom in on the bottom section that talks about SNAP. We call it out separately because it is different from other nutrition programs. While other nutrition programs don't ask about immigration status at all, that is still a part of eligibility for SNAP. So we call out that many immigrant families still can use SNAP, This is what it is. It's not something that will hurt your current or future immigration status, and it's not part of a public charge test. And you might qualify if you or a family member are, in one of these categories. We talk about humanitarian immigrants, lawful permanent residents with a few caveats, and US citizens. So that's our attempt to simplify the very complicated immigrant eligibility rules into an outreach message. I think it is hard. So I also always love to see how other folks are doing that. And then just a really quick shout out, it's gotten so much easier to update these things thanks to the work of the Protecting Immigrant Families campaign. So definitely check out their website and materials if you haven't. And the public charge information in our materials is now modeled on their Does Public Charge Apply to Me resources, which we can put in the chat in a minute. Next slide. And in addition to those materials, we've also just broadly been trying to build out our communication channels more generally with the families we work with. So this summer, we launched a bilingual monthly newsletter available via email and text to any of our clients that opt in. It's in English and Spanish, and it includes things like updates on the public charge rule, when households can expect to see their emergency allotments show up on their EBT cards for those that participate in SNAP. And we just share out other relevant resources and updates, and that content is informed by the frequently asked questions we get. So it's just one other way that we're trying to build trust and be responsive. And that's ultimately how we see our role in this. We're trying to provide facts and clear messaging and build trust so that folks have a place that feels safe to explore these programs. We're not trying to convince, we're just trying to make sure that people have the information and tools they need to make decisions they feel are best. And central to that is having trusted community members and grassroots groups really engaged in the work. So I'm going to pass it to Ale now to share more about what that looks like and her work with our SNAP Piece program, where we funnel pass-through SNAP outreach funds to other groups in the state to do this with our support, but in their own way.
Thank you, Anya. Next slide, please. Hello, everyone. Like Anya mentioned, my name is Alejandra Jimenez, and I am here with Hunger Free Colorado, and I am honored to go over our SNAP Piece program at Hunger Free. Next slide, please. So what is the SNAP Piece program? So the SNAP Piece, Piece standing for Partners Engagement in Application Services, seeks eligible organizations across Colorado based on needs and communities they serve to help their community with SNAP enrollment. Our partnerships include primary care clinics, WIC clinics, community colleges, universities, hospitals, and many more. And our goal is to build trust in the communities through these partnerships to provide answers to any doubts or questions surrounding stigmas or concerns when it comes to SNAP. We provide our funded partners with trainings and materials, as Anya showed in the slide, to be able to connect with their community and help them with the enrollment process, as well as the troubleshooting process of SNAP. All of the trainings and the materials we provide are in Spanish and also available in English. Our partners get ongoing support from the SNAP Piece team. We are a team of 3 that consists of 2 SNAP Piece coordinators and our Associate Director of Client Services. And we provide updates surrounding SNAP programs eligibility, as well as assistance when it comes to policy changes and how to go about making sure we share this with our community, as well as ensuring that the vocabulary and the resources that we're handing out to our community is in a language that is understandable to our community and it's not frightening them. Next slide, please. So who we serve through the SNAP Piece partnerships. Currently, our SNAP Piece program has over 30 partnerships that serve our Latinx community from all Latin America. With these partnerships, we work closely to ensure they have resources and materials to help their community identify where they fall in the eligibility spectrum. We want to ensure we welcome eligible households with mixed statuses, give them clear information that doesn't frighten them along the process or along the application journey, and provide support until they're actively receiving these benefits. We're also aware that not everyone will apply on the first encounter, but by being informed and providing answers to their questions, we are building trust and planting a seed that can later become a SNAP encounter. We are in 45 counties out of the 65 counties in Colorado. And the population we serve is Latinx, elders, students, homeless, and refugees from 8 different countries. Next slide, please. So how do we support our SNAP-Ps partners? We support them by providing them material, trainings, hosting webinars, and quarterly check-ins. They are hosted in Spanish with English interpretation. When we do this, we get more positive response from our Latinx community as we build a safe place for them to bring any concerns when it comes to SNAP and the roadblocks they might experience through their journey. We address public charge and how SNAP was not part of the public charge rule. And now with the new rule in place and a more clear rule in regards to SNAP not being part of public charge, it is important for our immigrant communities to be aware and start to remove old stigmas and perceptions about the old rule. We provide our partners with answers to questions about sponsorships, as many of our Latinx community members must have sponsors to adjust their status. Again, we provide language that is easy to digest and does not frighten the client from applying for SNAP. By using resources we get from the state or federally and making small changes to words where our community can understand the message, we're making it easy for our community to connect with us. And we build and ensure a safe place for our community to come and get answers and clarify any questions they may have. We're also building trust and opening up a platform for our community to share lived experiences and bring awareness to issues or concerns that we can later bring up the shame. Next slide, please. Okay, our SNAP-Ps in action. We always want to make sure that we give a platform for our SNAP-Ps partners. So many of our SNAP-Ps host community meetings with immigration lawyers to address any questions or concerns their community might have when it comes to applying for SNAP benefits. Other partners make appearances on Spanish radio stations where they sit along a panel of lawyer, community leaders, and advocates to talk about SNAP, address any questions about public charge, and talk about the positive impact of enrolling in the program. The goal is to address any negative stigma and rumors about the program. And we want to provide partners with material that helps our community understand public charge or the old rule. Coming from a family of immigrants, you are afraid to get any public assistance because public charge rule was engraved in us that even if you apply for a family member that qualifies, you can still get penalized when trying to adjust your status in the future. We provide accurate information and make sure that they don't go off of what they're hearing from their neighbors or their relatives. Since the new ruling on public charge, our team, along our SNAP-Ps partners, have started to work on material and resources for our community to have. Collaborative work with our SNAP-Ps is particularly important as they are on the front line hearing and witnessing community issues. We are also always in constant communication with our SNAP-Ps and other community organizations to join forces and make sure we are addressing and on top of any concerns or questions we think might rise to the surface when changes in policy happen. Our SNAP-Ps are great when it comes to bringing up questions or concerns that they are hearing from the community they serve so that we can quickly take action and address them. Next slide, please. So here are some major concerns that we hear. A lot of them surround public charge and what it means if they were ever to adjust their status. Sponsorship requirements when applying for SNAP. How will the sponsor be affected? Will the sponsor need to pay back public benefits? Could their legal status be affected if they apply for SNAP benefits? We want to address these questions in public meetings alongside our partners, welcoming our immigrant community, and by providing valuable material. Again, everything we host, all the material, meetings, webinars are in Spanish, and we have English interpretation available. Our staff is bilingual to make sure we are addressing questions and concerns in the language they are familiar with and comfortable with. Next slide, please. To wrap things up, I hope you learned a little bit of our SNAP Peace program, and we welcome you to reach out to us at any time. I thank you all for your time, and as we learn to see the importance of collaborative work, I leave you with one of my favorite quotes by Helen Keller: "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alejandra and Anya. Anna, I know that whether you're just beginning your SNAP outreach to immigrant families or you're a seasoned enrollment expert, I know that you got some great new information and ideas from our presenters today on some great successful strategies to connect families to SNAP. All right, well, now we have a number of questions, and a lot of the questions were based on whether people would have links to materials that were presented in the slides. And we will make sure that all the materials have links. We'll go through all the materials people flagged and ensure that those are part of the slide deck or the follow-up email. So I'm glad you all found those so valuable. I know the USDA non-citizen guidance for SNAP is just, it's my go-to resource when I'm trying to figure out who's eligible for SNAP based on their immigrant status. All right, so we have some other questions besides the materials, and I believe this one is for USDA. Jill, can you share what other languages you have information available with, and if there are plans to expand the universe of languages?
Sure. Right now, the web pages that are translated are just translated into Spanish, but we do have plans to translate into multiple languages. I think we have plans for over 30. I don't have the exact list or number right now, but trying to hit all of the most common languages, and that is taking a little bit more time, but we are really pushing for it and looking forward to having translation in more than just English and Spanish.
Thanks. And as I mentioned, FRAC is on the steering committee of the Protecting Immigrants Families Coalition. And if you go to their website, just Google Protecting Immigrant Families, there are many flyers that are in multiple languages. Hunger Free Colorado, do you all have materials in other languages on your website that people can avail themselves of?
So right now we just have English and Spanish, but we're definitely open to working on, especially as we're currently refreshing our food resources and public charge materials, definitely open to expanding it to other languages.
Great, thank you. And I encourage folks to put in the chat, if you have materials in other languages that you'd like to share, please put them in the chat and we can collect those at the end as well. We have a question from, well, I'm actually just going to read the question. Someone's interested in the regulations for non-citizens under the Violence Against Women Act. Jill, where could you get information on how, whether people who are under that regulation, those protections can access SNAP?
The clearest place to find that information is going to be in the non-citizen guidance. And I believe I saw one of my colleagues drop it in the chat. And so maybe if she's still on, she could drop the link again so it's fresh. But there will be information that could answer your question in the non-citizen guidance. And I believe it's on page 18.
Thank you. We have a question about whether FNS has a glossary of commonly used terms in Spanish and other languages. As FNS likely knows, there are often regional or country-specific terms that are not commonly understood, even in the same language. For example, Puerto Rico versus Central American versus South American Spanish is different. Do you have a glossary of commonly used SNAP-related terms? That would be very helpful.
That's a great question and comment. We have a glossary that we work off of internally, and I can certainly take it back to see if we can produce something for external publication.
Thank you. And someone has a question about SNAP Peas. How did you get your 3 positions funded for the SNAP Peas project?
I can take that, but jump in, Ale, if you have more to add. So we're funded through the state SNAP outreach plan. So annually, our organization, as well as other SNAP outreach partners in Colorado, work with our State Department of Human Services to submit a SNAP outreach plan to USDA for approval. And that enables us to then, via reimbursement, cover those roles, as well as pass through funds to other organizations that are doing that work. We do have to provide matching funds. So the federal funds cover 50% of it. So we also raise money with foundations and private donors. And we're really lucky that our state also puts some funds towards it from the general fund. But that is an annual fight at the legislature.
Yeah. And Jill had mentioned that FNS has a memo on priorities for SNAP outreach plans. Jill, if you're new to doing SNAP enrollment and application assistance, and you're interested in finding out if your state has an outreach plan and whether you could potentially be a partner, do you have suggestions on what you should do?
Sure. Your best bet would be reaching out to your SNAP state agency because they would have a list of all their partners and also be able to engage on you if you would like to be a partner.
Thanks. Someone is asking how can we safely determine if a person is lawfully present and eligible to apply? And I assume the we is if you worked in a community-based organization, how can you safely determine if a person is lawfully present and eligible to apply? I'll throw that question out to any of you who want to try and answer it.
I can take the first stab. So when a non-citizen is applying for SNAP, they do need to provide, if they're applying for themselves to receive benefits for themselves, they do need to provide documentation of their immigration status. The state then verifies that through SAVE system through USCIS. If SAVE returns that it doesn't match, or if at any time the non-citizen withdraws their application or that documentation, then that's the end of it. There's no further probing into immigration status. So it can be, someone can apply safely for SNAP.
And I just say from a partner perspective, we see like our role as outreach partners is not to verify all of the facts of someone's case. It's to help someone apply because we're not determining eligibility for them. So we just ask. And when we ask, we just make sure to really explain why we're asking, because we wouldn't, we would only ask these questions to help someone apply. So that's generally our approach.
And Jill, can you please reiterate, if someone is not applying for themselves and they are applying for their children, can the state agency ask the person who is not applying what their immigration status is?
They cannot. Immigration status is asked only for those applying for benefits for themselves who will be receiving those benefits.
Thank you. Here's a question about asylum seekers and refugees. Can you touch on eligibility for SNAP for those two immigrant categories, asylum seekers and refugees? And I'll throw that at Jill because she can refer people to what I consider the Bible for non-citizen guidance for SNAP.
Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned early on in my presentation, that some non-citizens need to meet additional criteria or meet a waiting period. Refugees and asylees do not. But again, that is outlined in our SNAP non-citizen guidance, and strongly encourage you to look there for further information.
All right. This is a pretty technical question. But it is for non-citizens, they have to be at least 5 years in the US or 40 qualifying quarters. And then someone was wondering if receiving SNAP affects an individual's eligibility to earn quarters of work.
Could you repeat that one more time for me?
Sure. They're wondering if receiving SNAP affects an individual's eligibility to earn quarters of work, any change?
So earning 40 quarters of work is one of those additional criterion that some non-citizens need to meet. So they are likely not receiving SNAP if they haven't met those 40 quarters yet, or if they've met some other criterion that does make them eligible, then it would not impact, it would not impact receiving or counting towards their 40 quarters. And again, non-citizen guidance, it's laid out nicely in there.
Thank you. So we have someone who works in San Francisco in the Human Services Agency, and they were really love the pre-screening materials. They were wondering if you'd be able to share your screening tool. And they have their email, but we'll put that in the again, the information that goes out to everyone post-webinar. But I believe that was the Hunger Free Colorado pre-screening tool, and they're beautiful graphics.
Absolutely. We'll share lots of links following this.
Yeah, you guys better copyright Snap Peas quickly. Everyone loves that. Very, very clever. All right, here we have another question. Are families eligible for SNAP if both parents don't have Social Security numbers? That's a great question. Why don't we have Jill, why don't you give the answer to that?
Sorry, one more time. You said if neither parent has a Social Security, can they apply on behalf of their child?
Well, are the parents eligible if they don't have Social Security numbers? That's the first half, I guess. And if they have children, let's say their children are US citizens, can they apply for their children?
If the parents are eligible, if they meet the criterion as an eligible non-citizen plus the criteria for SNAP, then they can receive SNAP. If they do not, they can still apply on behalf of their US citizen child, yes.
But then they wouldn't be able to apply for themselves if they weren't eligible.
Correct.
All right. So we have a few questions about the application process and helping clients. So if someone was denied SNAP, but a community worker thinks that they are eligible, what can you do to advocate for them getting SNAP? And that can be answered by Anya Rose. I'm sure you get some people who, signed up for SNAP, filled out the application, and they were not denied, but they're like, wait, I'm eligible. I'm a refugee. I don't understand what happened. What can you do in that instance?
Yeah, so there are a few paths forward. First, anyone can request a fair hearing, which allows them to sort of challenge the decision made on their case. But also through our outreach, we tend to try to resolve it quickly first. So part of the process of onboarding our partners and then our work in different communities is we try to also build relationships with the county offices. We're a county administered state. So in your state, that might be the state offices that are administering SNAP. So we have contacts at a lot of counties where we'll reach out on behalf of a client and try to support them through the application process and say, hey, our understanding is this. They got this response, doesn't make sense to us. What are next steps? And we try to resolve it that way because sometimes that can be really quick and effective. And sometimes it's not, but then there's the opportunity to request a fair hearing and challenge those decisions in those ways. And it does happen. Like, these rules are confusing for everyone. So I think having that follow-up can be really, really important. And that's part of, we call it case escalation at Hunger Free Colorado.
Great. Thanks for those mitigation strategies. They can be very, very helpful in resolving an issue. All right. Well, we are approaching the end of the webinar. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to end it on a joint activity for all of us to do together, which will take a minute. Before I ask this question, just wanted to mention that if you all haven't signed up for our Food Over Fear newsletter, please do so. It's a great source of information on the intersection of immigrant issues and food and nutrition programs and hunger. And next slide, please. I just wanted to close out with our contact information. Okay, here is the last question, and it's one for Jill. Jill, USDA, if our state is clearly violating LEP clients' rights to interpretation and language access, but are likely reporting to USDA that there isn't a problem, how should advocates go about advocating to USDA to correct this? I left with an easy question. Sorry about that, Jill.
That is a great question. They can reach out to our FNS regional offices that oversee the states and the state operations. I think that would be the best source of information and point of advocacy there.
Great. Thanks so much. All right. So we're going to do a quick joint closeout to try and capture the spirit in the room. So if everyone could put in the chat 3 words on how you are feeling now that SNAP is no longer included in the public charge rule. Just 3 words. And then I'll ask our fabulous panelists to share 3 words, and we'll close out. And we really hope you found this webinar helpful. We'd love ideas on what future webinars would be helpful to you all, and are definitely available for questions and follow-ups and any ideas you have on how we can support and strengthen your work. All right, so begin putting 3 words on how you feel now that the public charge rule does not include SNAP. And just to close out, a public charge is an immigration determination when people are typically applying for green card status. They may not get that green card status if they're considered a public charge, which is basically, they'll have an undue burden on the state, for those of you who ask in the chat. But we don't have to worry about public charge anymore, which are key takeaways from this webinar. All right, let's start with Alejandra. 3 words, how you're feeling.
3 words, hopeful, liberated, and relieved. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, Jill.
A little bit less how I'm feeling, but I think important, impactful, and clarity come to mind.
Excellent. And on to Anya.
I think energized and relieved and driven.
Wonderful. All right. We'll purview the chat for other words that folks are feeling. And trying to close out on a positive note. I'm so appreciative of the work everyone does to help immigrants access SNAP and address food insecurity. I am closing out with very, very grateful. Thanks, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the day.